Hi, and welcome to another episode of A.S.K on CYC. So to all you friends, fans out there, if you guys remember the episode when Rachel was pregnant with Emma, and they threw her a baby shower, and they got her gifts, and half the gifts she had no idea what they were. At that point, Rachel realized that being pregnant and having a child is not an easy path. And that's what tonight's show is about. We're here to talk about the struggles and to admit that it's not an easy path, but it's okay to ask questions and learn and grow from it as a young mum. So we have with us our guest for tonight, who's been there, who's done that, and who's had 3 children of her own. And we're giving you the opportunity today to ask the questions and know the answer. So please, the phone number is 0416 551 292. So let me introduce you to today's guest. We have with us the mother, Mary Nicola. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you, Mina.
It's a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So you're a mother of 3, yeah?
Yeah, 3.
And how old are they?
I got 3 under 4. So I got Lucas, who's 4, Bella, who's 3, and my newest Emily, who's just turned 6 months.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So how did you feel when you first found out you were pregnant with your first child?
So my husband Sam was super ready, and he's like, let's start having kids. I think we were married for about 3.5 years to 4 years, and he's like, we should have kids now. And I'm like, no, I don't think I'm ready. He's like, what do you mean? And we were talking about it for a good month to 3 months or so, and it was always me, the one that was objecting to it. And I think that concerned him quite a bit, but I had my reasons, and I said to him, look, I'm really young, I'm only 24, let's just hang on a bit. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not, I think it's time. So when I did fall pregnant with Lucas, I was super anxious. I was really nervous because I knew in the back of my mind, my life was about to change forever to a point that I'm not going to be able to control with things that I'm not going to be able to plan for, with risks and things like that. So I was really anxious. I know a lot of the times other women will fall pregnant and they're really happy, and they have announcement parties and things like that. But for me, actually, I know the usual protocol is you don't tell people or family, whatever, for the first 3 months. I actually didn't tell anyone, including my mom, actually, for the first 3 to 4 months, because I was petrified. Like I was really anxious. And I think my mum got a bit upset at me actually when I told her at 4 months. She's like, "How could you not tell me straight away?" And I think it was like, I just don't know what's happening. Like, this is really anxious for me. So I don't think I reacted as typical as movies make it look, like, that you're really happy and you can't wait. No, I was really anxious.
When you started to tell people, how did you feel after that?
I think I started to brighten up about it. Like I was happy, I was happy knowing that I'm about to bring a life of my own into the world and to raise them. But in the back of my mind, I was very aware that this is real. Like, this isn't just a baby and you can play with and stuff. Like, there was some real consequences that are about to happen once I bring this life into the world. So I was happy. In my social group, I was the first, so I think that also added to my anxiety. So we have a tight-knit social group of friends, and we're all married at the same time and things like that. But I was definitely the first to fall pregnant, and being the first in anything just makes you anxious, I think. So yeah.
Sure. Okay, so just being married on its own is difficult. Mm-hmm. The fact that you're responsible for another person, and also responsible for each other's salvation. Mm-hmm. So what was going through your head when you were pregnant and you knew you're going to be responsible for another person, another child, and also responsible for their salvation also?
I think, like you said, when you're married, you're in charge of that other person's salvation, and that's a struggle on its own. Like, you're struggling to read the Bible together and to pray together and to fast, and because all of a sudden you're married and you do all the cooking, mum's not there anymore, so fasting becomes a lot harder, to get to church on time. And now I'm thinking, okay, I'm about to bring another life on board. How am I going to do that? it's hard. It's really hard to think, okay, how am I going to bring them up into the church and bring them to believe in Jesus and, give them the life that, or the upbringing that your parents kind of gave you. So it plays on your mind. It plays on your mind constantly, making you think, am I doing the right thing? Am I reading them enough Bible stories? Have I said the right thing during prayer time? So which Bible do I buy? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So it's not easy. Look, a lot of it has to do with having conversations with your husband and talking to them about their role and what they're going to do. And but I think the main thing with all of this in the spiritual path is, I think Anabunia Orb and all the confession fathers, and all the fathers that I've spoken to have said the same thing. Bring your kids up in the church. Like, it's super important, because if they grow up in the church and they see all their friends in church, if they attend Sunday school, if they go to church and have communion, if that's what they know, what their life should entail and have, then they're going to think that they're going to know, or they're going to be brought up to know that that's the norm. They'll never need to question it until they reach that stage and then actually make the decision for themselves that I want to go to church. It's no longer just my parents taking me. So I think it's a continuous thing. It's a developmental thing. It's not just a stagnant decision. Hey, today we're going to church and that's it. No, it's definitely a developmental thing. So I don't think you can ever be too young. I remember very clearly, Lucas was 5 days old and he went to church. And I made it my mission to do that. I wanted his first outing to go to church, and he was 5 days old. And a lot of the older people and the older tetas were like, how could you take him out so early? And they were really upset and Ghati and stuff like that. But for me, that was really important. I wanted him to, first outing, to be at church. So, yeah.
Okay. So, just a question. So before someone brings a child into the world, do you think it's important they should sit with their partner and talk about where they are in their spiritual life before bringing a child into the world?
100%. I think the conversation has to have happened on a number of occasions, not just on the spiritual side of things, because I think you and your partner definitely have to be on the path to spiritual righteousness. But that is such a difficult thing to be on, because it's like I said, it's like a roller coaster. Sometimes you have a good stage where you are doing really well at your spiritual life, you're reading the Bible, you're going to have confession, and then other times it's just, it's way off. So I think that definitely the conversation has to have been had, and not just, like I said, your spiritual. I think you need to understand where you are at in terms of your relationship with your partner, the financial situation you're in. Kids are expensive, super expensive. They come with a massive price tag from the moment you bring them, with all the things that they need for you to keep them for them to survive. So yeah, the financial situation you're at. Are you willing to give up work for a period of time? Can your house sustain a child? You know what I mean? So conversations definitely need to have. You need to have them with your spouse, and I think you need to be brutally honest with each other. I don't think you cannot have a child in haste. Definitely not in today's world, because today's world's tough.
Okay. Please, let's talk about the struggles that you've had, but let's focus on post-pregnancy. Mm-hmm. So when the child came into the picture, what are the kind of struggles you faced?
Okay, so, well, most mothers will probably relate to me when I say, when you have your child, you stay in hospital for the first 5 days, and they kind of teach you the things like how to bath them, how to feed them, change them, things like that. And it's very surreal. Okay, so like I said, it's nothing like the movies, none of that stuff that you ever watch. It's very surreal, because all of a sudden you have this being in your hands that doesn't stop crying, and you try and feed them, you try and change them, you try and burp them, but because they don't talk, you don't know what to do. And I think that's a massive shock to the system, especially at night when the rest of the hospital is all quiet and it's just you and your baby, and they start crying and you're by yourself. It's a really difficult time. It's a scary situation to be in. Speaking quite personally, I think I'm a pretty tough cookie as a person. But when I had my first, I have to admit, I fell into postnatal depression with Lucas, which shocked me. I could not believe that happened to me, and I cried for 2 weeks straight, and I couldn't believe it. And I hid that from my mum, because in my family, I'm the tough one. My dad brought me up pretty tough, and so I would always keep my voice away from the phone. My mum would call. I'd wipe my face dry when my mum would come and see me. But she knew something wasn't right. And I just couldn't believe that I fell into postnatal depression. And my husband wouldn't understand. Like, he said to me, "What's wrong?" I go, "I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I can't control myself from crying because I had this child in my hand that I just didn't know what to do for him to make him happy." And it's really tough on the mum. Like, it's really tough on the woman as well to think, but they never told me it was going to be like this. You know, they told me that they're going to laugh and play and do burps and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So it's tough like that. That first, I reckon, 2 weeks to 6 weeks into your first child's life is really tough times. The sleep deprivation kills you. The crying makes you feel guilty as a mother, like you don't know what to do to make it right by them. You're scared to tell your own parents because you don't want your parents to worry about you. So your husband doesn't know what to do for you or the baby. So first baby's tough. Like,
so
really
how
tough.
did you overcome it? What helped?
What helped was, for me, I knew exactly what it was that was making me anxious for my child. So my boy, he got circumcised the second week he was born, and as soon as that was done, I was fine. So postnatal depression disappeared.
Yeah.
So for me, once that happened, I thought, oh, okay, right, that was what's making me really anxious. Once that was done, I started to open up a bit to my mum, and she's like, okay, give me Lucas, go to sleep. And that really helped. I think the sleep deprivation really breaks the mum down. When you're up every 2 hours feeding your child from morning to night, and your husband's at work and you have no one to talk to, it can really get to you. So definitely surround yourself with people you trust. If you have access to your mother, definitely bring your mother on board to help you out. Your family members, and talk to people, like really talk to people. So the only reason why I knew I fell into postnatal depression is because I spoke to someone who fell into it. So when I saw the signs that she was talking about, I knew that's what it was. So communication is so important. And don't be shy to say, well, I'm feeling this, or I don't know what to do. Or I think us as women in particular, and then as mothers, we like to think that we're super women and we can do everything on our own. But and generally we can, but I think it's important that talk to people and definitely surround yourself with people that can just listen and understand. So yeah, and you pull through. So yeah.
So during that first few weeks where you struggled, were there moments where the child would do something funny or smile?
Oh, of course.
It would just make you forget about all this?
Yeah, of course. And I think that's God's beautiful plan, and He doesn't give you this foreign being. The moment you have your own child in your hands, it's like you've known them for 1,000 years. You know, yes, they cry endlessly and you know, and they always want to be fed and things like that. But all they have to do is just stare at you and smile, you know, or pull a funny face, or do bubbles with their mouth or something, and you just forget everything. You know, it's true. Like you just realize how reliant they are on you and how, you know, like you are their everything, and it's a beautiful feeling actually. So yeah, look. There's lots of difficult times, but just one beautiful smile from your child makes it all go away. So, yeah.
Yeah. Just a reminder to our viewers, if you have a question that you want to ask Mary today, so please send us your questions to 0416 551 292. Send us a text and you'll remain anonymous. And if you're courageous enough, give us a call and we'll answer it for you live on the show tonight. So we got a question that came in from an audience member. They're asking, in your opinion, how important is choosing your child's name, and how does their name impact in their life?
That's a great question. Again, I remember when I was pregnant with my first, I downloaded one of those name apps on my phone. I was just going through them, and I knew I was having a boy, so I was looking through all the boy names. And for me, I think the name was super important because I feel like the name is really going to reflect on their character. So I wanted a strong name and a reflective name of who I wanted my son to be. And I didn't want anything super celebrity crazy like Apple or Sydney or something like that, you know. No, I wanted something that's going to reflect who they are and the type of upbringing they're going to have. And so I was tossing up between, well, Sam and I were tossing up between Lucas and Christian. And I was really leaning towards Christian because I wanted people to look at my son and say, he's a child of God. So I think it's actually super important, the name that you choose. Again, it's just a reflection of who they are, but also for practical things like how long is it how many letters is in their name, and can they spell it on a competition sheet at school, for example. Like, I have a friend of mine who, by the time she finished writing her first name and last name on a maths competition sheet, the rest of us would be filling everything else. It was so long. So I think practical things like that as well. You know, does it sound nice? Can your parents and parents-in-law pronounce it well, in English? Stuff like that. I know there was a Simpson episode once that was, they were trying to think of all the rhyming names that Bart can be teased by. And I know it sounds pretty trivial, but yeah, can your child's name be used to be teased by at school? Because kids can be mean these days. So I think it's important. I think it's definitely an important conversation to have with your spouse when it comes to choosing your child's name. Yeah.
Okay. So everyone who had a baby becomes an automatic expert.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you accept advice from anyone and everyone that had a child? Why or why not?
I heard everybody's advice. So like I said, in my social group, I was the first. So I didn't get too much advice from my particular group of friends, but I definitely got a lot of advice from my family members. I got a lot of advice from the nurses in the hospital, from some staff members at work. And I took it all on board. I got a lot of advice from my mother-in-law as well. So I took it all on board and kind of made my own decisions as to what I wanted to do. So something as simple as, what are you going to take when you go into labour? You're going to take any drugs? You're going to take epidural? You're going to take the gas? What are you going to do? And it's definitely something you need to think about and make a decision on, something as important as that. So at the time, you're not, you're not actually petrified, or you're not struggling to make a decision. But I'm the type of person who doesn't like to be told you need to do this, because I think, as every mother would probably agree, every child is different. Every mother and family is different, and I think every family for their child needs to make the right decision for them. I think books and psychologists and all of that make very, they have great advice, but they also give particular advice for very general cases, and no child is the same as another child. Ever, and I say that from a teaching perspective, and I say that from my children's perspective. Just from the three I have, each one of them is different. I can already see my 6-month-old having different qualities to Bella and to Lucas. So definitely hear everybody out, and then mash it all up and make up your own conclusion and see what works. And I actually had a lovely nurse who said to me, look, everyone's going to tell you something, do what works for you. And I've lived by that, and so far, so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I got one last question before we go on break.
Mm-hmm.
So for all the mums who are out there watching, if they can grab their husbands right now,
Yeah.
because this question is crucial for them.
Yeah.
So majority of the time, the mother takes the most of the responsibility when caring for the child.
Mm-hmm.
This can get too much, and so I want to ask, how can the father help with the responsibility, care, and taking a load off the mum's shoulders?
I think it's imperative, and I really stress that, I think it's imperative that the father takes a role in the child's life from day one, because I just don't think, because I tell you why, parenting as we know it today is so much more complicated for two reasons. One, the child is different than a long time ago because of our world today. Two, the world's changed in that it's not just the father that goes to work anymore. No, it's generally, in most families, the mother and the father both go to work. So it's not like mothers now just stay home and do nothing but raise the children. So if we're sharing the workload, fathers have to share in the parenting side of things, because purely for the sake that it is the hardest thing to do. And I say that knowing that I teach year 11 and 12 children at school. I can teach year 11 and 12 boys, and that's a piece of cake. But when I try and raise my own 3 kids at home who are 4, 3 and 6 months, it is the most difficult thing that I'm struggling with at the moment, and I'm really struggling with it. So the father definitely has to take on a role for nothing other than the sake of the mother's sanity, because it could get to a point where if they don't help, I think the mother can start resenting her children, and that's very unhealthy. I think just something like give the mother a break, like just come home from work and just take the kids for an hour. Let the mother have a shower, or let the mother go over and have a walk or something, or change the next nappy, you know what I mean? It's imperative for the mother's health and mental stability for the father to get involved. I think it's also just as important for the father's relationship with the children to get involved. You know, like you don't want your children growing up having an estranged relationship, thinking that dad just goes to work, comes home, reads the newspaper, watches TV and goes to sleep. You know, you want to have a relationship with your children, and again, that's developmental. That doesn't just happen overnight. So for the sake of the relationship with his children, he definitely needs to get on board. And look, fathers don't have to change pooey nappies. Yes, they don't tend to like that part, but at least change just the wee ones that don't have a smell. You know, bath them, feed them, you know, muck around on the ground or something, but give the mother a break. I think it's definitely something that she needs quite often.
So they say the first few months is crucial in a baby stage because they're like sponges and they absorb. So they can sense that the father's not present?
Oh, definitely, definitely. The first 6 months with both Lucas and Bella, I stayed home from work, and as soon as Sam would come home, the kids would run to him straight away. That's the first thing they wanted to do. So, and they were only 6 months old, so they definitely, 6 months to a year, so they definitely feel the presence of the father and lack of when he's not home. And it's lovely that they would run to him and want to spend that time with him. And so, if the father can engage with the child and just spend a solid half an hour with them, it will go so long with them. And I personally see it because I'm now the one that's at home. My kids love playing with Sam. They love playing and mucking around with him, and he gets right down to their level. Like, he'll get onto the carpet and roll around and, you know, play cars and all that stuff, and I'll just sit and have a cup of coffee, you know, and it's very much needed for the mother. So,
okay,
yeah.
We're going to go for a quick break. We'll come back and continue.
Sounds good.
So to our viewers, when we come back, we'll continue our discussion. Please have your questions prepared and send them to 0416 551 292, or give us a call and speak to Mary and ask her some questions, and we'll answer it for you live tonight on the show. Thank you.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Hi, and welcome back to Ask on CYC, where we're talking about being a mum and how it's not easy. So we're going to get back into the discussion, but before we do, the phone number is 0416 551 292. Please send us your questions and we'll answer it for you on the live show tonight. So I know we talked about what it was like having your first pregnancy. So I want to ask you about your second and third. What encouraged you to have a second and third child?
I think, well, again, my husband was very encouraging of wanting to have a second, and for really good reasons. I think having an only child, I think if you have the option not to have an only child, it's very healthy not to, because I think the child really struggles. And I can only say that from now because I see Lucas playing with his sister and playing with his cousins, and it's a beautiful thing to see. And growing up with siblings, it helps to encourage a different confident personality, whereas I think if he grew up on his own and only ever had to interact with adults like me and my husband, I think he would have grown up quite differently. This is not to say that people that have grown up as only children lack confidence or anything, but I think if you have the option and the ability to bring up siblings for your children, that's a beautiful thing, because you know, I'm one of three and I have a beautiful relationship with my sister and brother, and you grow up with them, and you know, you play with them and you make memories with them, and it's a beautiful thing. So I think once the shock of the first, you get past the first shock, you think, okay, it's time to start a family. You know, one is nice, but two is a family. And so yeah, the first is the shock. Second is nice, like you're prepped, you know what I mean? It's like I knew exactly what was going to happen to my body. I knew exactly what I'm doing in hospital. I knew that I was about to lose my sleep again, but you're prepped, you know what I mean? So it's not as difficult. And I thought to myself, okay, awesome, Lucas is going to have a sister, you know, that he could eventually play with and have that really nice relationship with. So yeah, I think the second is actually an easier choice to make than the first. The first is jumping into the deep side of the pool. Second is like, yeah, it's okay, we can do this. So yeah.
Yeah. I know we spoke earlier about work and getting back into work. So how soon did you get back into work, and how did you find the balance?
So I went back to work after Lucas, after 6 months. and I went back full time, and that was really hard. It was very, very difficult to be at work 5 days a week and having to leave him, even though I knew I was only leaving him with my mum, you know, but it's really hard. And I was actually surprised at how much I cried on that first day back at work. It's tough, you know, it's really tough. It makes you appreciate the time that you do have with him, with your child in the afternoon when you get back from work on weekends, but it's super tough. And I think it kind of made me put things into priority when I had my second. When I had my second, I went back to work after 6 months again, but this time I chose part-time. God, I thank God for that every day, because it's so much better of a balance to be back at work 3 days a week and to be with your children, you know, the other 4 days. It works better, you know, you're not as stressed as at work, then you come home and you're not stressed at home with your children. It's not a battle to make everything work. So I think if women out there have the ability to, or the option, because I know part-time is a luxury for a lot of women, but if they have the option, definitely grasp it, because I've seen the difference between full-time and part-time definitely works a lot better if you have children. But definitely go to work. Like, definitely don't not go to work. Like, if you have the ability, go and interact with adults, because it's extremely encouraging to talk to people at your level, not just to be at home all day with children. But again, that's my opinion. Like, I know there are women who absolutely love staying at home with their kids, and that's their full-time job, and rightly so. Children is a full-time job. For me, it's just, I needed that separation where sometimes I need to be with adults and to feel like I'm doing something else other than just raising children. So if you have that luxury, definitely part-time work is a great balance.
Sure. Okay, so I want to talk about the spiritual life with your kids. So how did you find the balance of having a spiritual life and also caring for your children at the same time?
So I have to admit, my spiritual life took a bit of a dive when I had when I had Lucas and Bella, because my first two kids are only 14 months apart, so they're very close. So I pretty much had two newborns very close to each other. So my personal spiritual life kind of took a dip. And when I felt like my own kid's spiritual life was starting to take a dip as well, I asked my confession father, okay, what can I do? And I needed to direct me as to what I need to do for us to pick it up again. And he simply said, look, if you can't pray every night, that's fine, but read the Bible with them every single night. He goes, if you can embed reading the Bible with them every night, they're the ones that are going to force you to do it if you miss it. And it was really true. I think we started a week and we read the Bible every day for a week, Sam and I with the kids. And the one night we got lazy or we were tired and we forgot, it'd be Lucas screaming, Mummy, you didn't read the Bible. Or Bella, Mummy, you need to come and read the Bible. I want the blue one or I want the yellow one. So they would force us to get out of bed and read it. So it was a wonderful feeling to know that my kids want me to read the Bible to them. And Father Jonathan said to me, if you can get that habit in them up to before the age of 7, you've got them. Because if you don't embed that habit into them after the age of 7, it's so much harder to do, and it's almost a battle that you're going to lose. So embed it now, and you're safer later. So we're doing the Bible now quite regularly, and if we don't, they force us. The next step is to start praying regularly. But even just in the car, like for me, it's just trying to bring Jesus into everything and every aspect of our life, and not making it such a formal event. Like when we're eating, I'll say to them, did you guys thank Jesus for the food? And like, thank you, Jesus, for the food. Something as simple as that. Or when we wake up in the morning, I dress them, I get them into the car and we're driving to childcare. I'll be like, okay, guys, did we thank Jesus for waking up in the morning? Thank you, Jesus. Did we thank Jesus for our clothes? Thank you, Jesus. So just simple things like that to remind them that everything you have is from Jesus, My daughter Bella, she has this habit where if she doesn't want to eat her food, she just grabs her plate and chucks everything in the bin. And that really bugs me because I don't like wasting food. So we were driving into Macca's once through drive-through, and I saw unfortunately a poor man, just this guy wearing really raggy clothes walking past the Macca's. So I drove up and I put my car into park. I put the window down and I said, hey buddy, you want some food? And he came up to the window and I passed him the bag of food. And I can see Lucas from my mirror watching everything that I'm doing. And I did it on purpose because I pulled aside and I said to Lucas, Lucas, can you see that man? He's like, yeah. I go, do you know who that is? He goes, no. I go, that's a poor man. I go, remember the story we read in the Bible about the poor man? He's like, yeah. I go, see how hungry he was? See how he looked? He goes, yeah. I go, did you see why Mummy gave him the food? And he's like, yeah. I go, because we need to thank Jesus for all the food we have. That's why, Bella, I tell you not to throw the food. So we're going to eat our food now? She's like, yes, Mummy. And from that day on, Bella doesn't throw her food. I say to them, if you don't want it, give it to me, because Jesus gave us food to eat, not to throw. So if you can embed Jesus in everything and in every aspect of your child's life and not make it so rigid or so formal, like stand up and pray. You know, you can only pray in church. Don't make it so rigid, because children are innocent. Like you said, children are sponges. They'll take everything you tell them. So if you make it as innocent and as simple as that, where you just thank Jesus for the food, for the clothes, and don't throw it out, they'll accept it, and it's just normal for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
That's all right.
We've got a question from an audience. They're asking, I learned at uni that kids learn the most in their lives between the ages of 3 to 5 years. What's your opinion on this?
I don't know the psychology or the stat behind it, but I agree with that 100%. So my child, Lucas, is 4 at the moment, and he is picking up everything. Everything we say, everything we do, it's amazing how much he's picking up. And unfortunately, it's also picking up the bad stuff that we say or do as well. So if we slip a word out at home, he'll pick it up straight away, and we have to watch ourselves. We say, no, Lucas, don't say that. Mummy said a naughty word, don't say that. So it's 100% true. That's why they say children between those ages can pick up and learn an instrument really quickly or learn another language. So if you have the time and the money and the patience to invest in your child at those years to learn a sport or an instrument or another language or anything, just teach them how to read. It's definitely the perfect age, because they're just sponges, and they are ready to pick up everything that you teach them. So, yeah.
Sure. So I've got a question. Why is it a healthy attitude to push aside any pride and ask for help?
I think it's simply because we don't know everything. Like, you know, I can sit here and I can rave on and on, but I don't know anything or everything. I speak from the experience that I learn every day. And I think for me, if I don't ask my mum, like I call my mum every day, if not 3-4 times a day. And I said to her, Mum, Lucas did this today, what do I do? Or Mum, Bella doesn't want to eat her vegetables, what do I do? It's not a matter of pride, it's just a matter of understanding that you're new at this and your parents have done it, or your sister is doing it now, or your friends are doing it now. Why don't you just ask them, see what's happening with them? Maybe what they tell you will work. You know, maybe it won't. It's fine. It's like what the question you said before. You know, with all the advice, sometimes it's a bit of an advice overload, which is fine, and that's why you don't need to take everything on board. But hear everybody out and ask people. You know, like I really struggled with putting my children into a sleep routine. And my sister, who's an avid reader, can read every book under the sun. And she said to me, look, I read this and I tried that and did this. See how you go. And I took a bit from this and a bit from that, and we figured it out for my children. And now they're sleeping in a decent routine. I think asking is important, because you're not going to have time to read every single book and analyze what works and what doesn't. So if you have close friends and family that you trust, ask away and make up your own opinion and see what works for you and your family.
Sure. So do you have any final tips for mums in the planning?
In the planning?
Yeah.
Well, I think in the planning you need to kind of talk about how many kids you want in total. I think that's important. I think you need to discuss the space gap as well between the children and when you want to have them. Discuss things like, are you going to go back to work or not? Because you're going to have to plan where your children go. You know, do you live quite close to your parents and your parents-in-law, or are you going to have to put them in childcare, because that attracts, you know, financial commitment and things like that. So definitely don't have children at a whim. It's a lifelong commitment, and it's something that's going to change your life forever, in a positive way, but in a very demanding way. So definitely have a very long conversation with your husband, discuss things that you know is going to change your life for the better.
Yeah. So how about any tips for mums who are struggling with the young ones who are just about to throw the towel, especially at the terrible twos stage?
Yeah, you're not alone. I think mothers are their worst critics. Like, I'm constantly telling my sister, I'm not doing this right, and I can't do this, and my kids are bonkers, and I la la la. And she's like, Mary, you're a good mum. Like, I'm not a good mum. And we are our worst critics as women and as mothers, and we judge ourselves really hard. You know, we look at reality TV and we see all these wonderful mothers and their children are all well behaved and they look all clean in their clothes, and we think, okay, I can do this. But then they spill tomato sauce on their shirt and you go bonkers. You know, they spill milk on the floor and you go bonkers. So nothing is as what it seems. And I don't think we as mothers should look at other women or other mothers and judge them for the picture that they seem to show, because everything at home is completely different. You know, like, and I think we need to accept reality that with kids, nothing is perfect and nothing can go according to plan. And I think it's okay. Like I said, I am part of a very good, close group of friends, and we are very honest that way. And I think the honesty between us as mothers in our group helps us to think, okay, so I didn't sleep well last night. How did you go? Yeah, I had a shocker overnight. So it's kind of okay to admit that. But I think if we're all going to hide away in our little corner and pretend like everything's all right, and I have to put on a big smile in front of my friends, I think women will definitely throw in a towel. So don't feel like you're alone. You definitely are not. Like I said, I think motherhood for me is the most difficult thing I've ever encountered or had to do in my lifetime, and I'm happy to admit that to anyone that asks me. And I think women need to admit that openly and freely to their spouse and to their group of friends, so that they know that they're struggling, so that they can ask for help, so they can say to their husband, look, I need to just go away and have a cup of coffee. You know, that's okay. You know, I think it's extremely damaging for the mother to have to constantly hide away and say everything's all right when it's not. You know, I think it's okay for mums to say, today was a bad day. We'll start again tomorrow.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Okay, that's all we have time for today's show. I'd like to thank you for it. So I want to finish off with a Bible verse.
Mm-hmm.
There's one in Matthew chapter 19 verse 14 where it shows Jesus' his opinion on children.
Mm-hmm.
So it says, but Jesus said, let the little come to me, and do not forbid them, for of such is the kingdom of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to thank you for having you on the show. You know, it was a pleasure, and thank you for your insight on what it was like being a mum.
Thanks, Mina. No, it was a great pleasure, and yeah, definitely children are God's gift to us, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So parents, go have kids.
And I also like to thank the viewers for tuning into today's show. It was a good and insightful show, and I hope you've learnt something from it. So I'm Mina Ibrahim from your CYC studios in Sydney. Good night and God bless.
CYC, Christian Youth Channel.
Are you interested in youth problems?
I have many friends who would say that their body is their business.
Do you wonder of specific matters in your life?
The reason why they created that choir was to stop women from actually talking and from gossiping. And
Are you afraid of making some quick decisions?
Abortion shouldn't happen because we don't know if the fetus is a person.
Do you want to know many answers of various questions?
Men and women are different, and I think unfortunately society at the moment really doesn't want to